Dr. L.S. Subramanian.
Hi, everyone. This is Huzefa Motiwala. I'm the Director for Systems Engineering, Palo Alto Networks, India and SAARC. Glad to be here discussing about the topic around safeguarding microfinance banking from cyber threats as part of our joint forum with Banking Frontiers and Palo Alto Networks.
The Reserve Bank of India has recently strengthened the regulatory standards for microfinance banks and is taking a firm stance on enforcing its master directions. What are your thoughts on the potential impact of these changes on the microfinance sector in India?
Key focus areas of the IT governance and the Master Act that RBI is enforcing, and that includes primarily 5 areas. One is strategic alignment. How are we aligning from an overall business alignment and governance alignment perspective? Second is around the entire aspect of risk management. And in this, right, there's a certain element of IT risk and then cybersecurity risk as part of it. Resource management. How are you, ensuring that there is enough capacity and capability out there? Performance management is the fourth one, ensuring that, you're giving in terms of what is the outcome required from a consumer perspective. And finally, most importantly, business continuity and disaster recovery management, right? Ensuring that the business uptime is maintained. So if you look at all of these 5 areas, I think RBI has done a good job of touching key areas, which it is, already implying in some of the other larger, banks in the country. These strengthening, according to me, has a very significant shift in the regulatory landscape of the microfinance sector. And largely, I feel they are very positive, but there is a challenging implication also for the microfinance sector. And allow me to elaborate on that. From a positivity impact perspective, I think this will lead to a lot more enhanced stability, right? Because of the regulatory standards coming in a lot more stricter manner. This ensures that the stability and sustainability of the microfinance bank is maintained, and the risk or the over-indebtedness is taken under control, ensuring a very responsible lending practice is what I feel is number one. Second, I think from a governance perspective, this will help promote better governance practices in the MFBs, including some very, very stronger risk management framework. It has actually gone ahead and put in some very, very good process, people, technology aspect of it, including some transparency and accountability. I think this will instill a lot more greater confidence among the investors, regulators, borrowers. And finally, I think for the consumers, I think this will mean a lot more better protection, right, for the microfinance borrowers, including some very fair lending practices, transparency, especially in terms of data. Now with the DPDP Act coming in, the whole data confidentiality and all that will have a very, very good impact, I feel. However, I feel all of these, compliance always comes at a cost, right? So the MFBs may be faced with an increased compliance cost associated with putting all of these strengthened regulatory standards in place, including investments in technologies, human resources, capacity building, across. So I feel that down the line, there is a market consolidation which may happen because of these changes. The smaller MFBs may try to come under the umbrella of a larger MFB, which has all these practices in place.
Excellent perspective. How can the microfinance banks strengthen the IT governance framework to align with the standards expected of larger Indian banks, considering the specific size and resource constraints?
I think if you look at the IT governance framework, and if you double click specifically around the cybersecurity aspect of it, the 5 areas which they are governing. One is the whole data protection side of it. How do microfinance handle sensitive financial information of the client, including personal data, financial data? How do you ensure that the infrastructure on which these banks are running, and they rely heavily, obviously everything is right now relying heavily on information technology. How are they managing the whole transactions, securing transactions, the accounts, the operations? Are the relevant measures or cybersecurity measures are in place to protect the IT infrastructure? Third is around, the client trust and confidence. How do you demonstrate that whatever you are doing from a cybersecurity perspective is going to enhance that client trust and confidence in the microfinance bank? Fourth is the entire area around the compliance requirement, because regulatory standard often from a cybersecurity and data protection perspective is the whole idea is to ensure the adherence to industry standard and regulatory guidelines, right? And a failure to show that could realize or measure in terms of penalties and fines and reputation damage. And finally, the whole thing comes around with a very important aspect of risk management. And cybersecurity is absolutely an integral part of that risk management of the whole risk management framework for microfinance banks. So I think if you look at these 5 areas, and now coming back to your original question of how do microfinance banks with their limited sort of capabilities or in terms of resources, how do they approach this? I fundamentally believe that a risk-based approach is extremely important, and let me elaborate that. Right, a risk-based approach, what it will help do them is to prioritize which are the crown jewels, right, and the risks associated with that, whether it's the apps, the data, the systems, and then accordingly prioritize the investments and initiatives to protect those crown jewels. Now, when I say protecting of those crown jewels, whether it is around customer data protection, the financial transaction compliance, it needs to be allowed to follow a framework. And the easiest and simplest framework that I recommend is a 5-step process, right? Harden the attack surface, wherever there is exposure to one of these crown jewels. Implement a zero trust policy between these, right? If a user and an application and data, that access should not be assumed based on some trust. Every access, every interaction should be questioned. Once you do these 2 things, the next step is to prevent all known attacks out there which are happening all across the globe. How do you have enough intelligence to prevent that? If you can't prevent, detect all unknown threats, zero the threats, right? Keep again robust procedures in place. And finally, how do you natively integrate all of these to have a very consistent cybersecurity approach, irrespective of where the user is, where the data is, what device is, what application. So it has to be led with a very, very integrated AI and automation-led approach. And this can only be driven by partners like us who have these platforms ready and can be delivered in a managed services.
I think you have formed up 2 excellent points. One is use of AI, right? You can't throw more bodies. First of all, more cybersecurity bodies are not available in the marketplace. So there's a huge shortage. And microfinance companies definitely may not have the resources to hire so many people. First of all, they're not even available. Okay. So obviously AI is what is the game changer. How do you think this will benefit, microfinance banks in complying?
It's like a game of cricket, right? You're the batsman. You need to get right every time. The bowler only needs 1 ball to get you out, and that's pretty much what the banks are facing, right? In terms of ensuring that you're covered in that. But I think what is more important is all of these microfinance banks largely are now, digitally transformed, which means they are running applications which are transformed, running from a cloud perspective, and on-prem doesn't matter. And then you have these consumers and users who are accessing that from any device, any location. So fundamentally, the attack surface has increased. And to add to that, and we spoke about AI piece of it, the adversaries also have access to these very advanced AI tools, right? So the attacks are also become very, very sophisticated, right? So not only have we increased the attack surface, but the attacks are also using some very, very modern, deep method to capitalize on that increase in attack surface and vulnerabilities. I'll give you one statistics, for example. According to our recent ransomware retrospective incident response report, financial services is the number 2 most targeted, after manufacturing in India. So that's the set of threat landscape that we're looking upon. In order to help that, from Palo Alto perspective, I think we believe that since the attacks are advanced, the threats protection needs to be advanced, and it needs to be in 4 areas, right? You have to have an advanced threat prevention, detection, response, and resilience mean, right? So there has to be enough AI-driven approach, prescriptive AI-driven approach to ensure that all your prevention and detection mechanisms are up, but including using of generative AI for response and resilience perspective, so that operationally you're there. And all of these, we believe fundamentally from a Palo Alto Network perspective, is it can only be driven if you have a integrated platformized approach. You have to have integration happening across your prevention capability, the detection, response, resiliency, because it's very tightly stitched. And all of these, running at a cloud scale, which means I should have enough capabilities behind the scene to know which was those last attacks which are happening in the globe, which is that latest unknown attack which is happening, and give you that intelligence and the power right in your environment, microfinance bank's environment at that time when they are facing this. So needs to be an integrated approach at a cloud scale. However, everybody might say that yes, integration, cloud scale is the name of the game. But I think what separates the wheat from the chef, or somebody like us being able to do that much more efficiently, is because of the rich telemetry that Palo Alto Network collects today, right? We are collecting huge amount of data basis our enforcement points, our technologies which have been adopted across the globe by thousands and thousands of customers, that entire telemetry coming to a single data lake. And on top of that is where the magic happens of when you apply the AI algorithms and analytics coming out. And then whatever is the outcome that's delivered straight to these microfinance banks in their environment, ensuring that their prevention detection response is always up, is always up to the mark, in line with the latest advanced sophisticated attacks, and delivered in a managed services way, or delivered in an automated or a software as a service way, which ensures that their dependency on the skills and technical aspect is very, very less. So from a Palo Alto Network perspective, I think we have those three platforms: the network security platform, the cloud security platform, and the SOC automation, which are ensuring that this happens always on the go. Right from the time you're writing the code or you're using an application, you're making it live, to the underlying infrastructure, to ensuring the compliance of that infrastructure in accordance to the guidelines. All of that can be delivered in an integrated and platform system. Thank you very much.